obviously that becomes more dramatic and obviously more, well, obviously cannibalism is about as bad as you can get. But even in fleeting sexual relationships, what you do is you turn a person into an object, okay, for consumption. Pope Francis has talked a lot about this, the disposal society. So you get disposable razors for the guys and you throw them away. You get disposable napkins, throw them away. You get disposable people, use them, throw them away. So, okay, it's fine to throw away razors and napkins, but you cannot throw away human beings. So this is where we turn them into objects. Whereas part of this society, well, just me and my little den, and I just use things and then throw them away. Anyway, this little talk is going to be kind of high speed, and it's lots of little different ideas thrown in here, maybe a little bit mishmashy. Okay, I just prepared it for something I gave yesterday, but anyway, there's some ideas here which you might find interesting. Okay, and the title is identity. It's all, well, anyway, so that's the title, identity, because people talk about identity, talk a lot these days about identity politics. Okay, which is as it related. Identity is who am I, kind of thing. We all ask that question, who am I? It's the big question. Who am I? What's my real identity? If we feel we're not being true to ourselves, we're not being true to our identity, as we grow up our identity is being formed, all these kind of things. So identity. So the word, actually, etymologies, I like etymologies. I think they tell you a lot about the meaning of a word. You're going into the archaeology of a word. You see, what did it originally mean? What did people, it was being used for 500 years, well, what have people been saying, using this word to mean, okay? So identity comes into the English language around 1600, meaning sameness, oneness, state of being the same, ultimately from Latin idem. So the Latin word idem just means the same, okay? So sometimes you see idem instead of ditto. So you get that. Instead of saying ditto, they say idem, okay? And like in written things. And then identity crisis, we've all heard about that. I'm having an identity crisis, I don't know who I am. That came into English language in 1954, pretty late. Then we have the word identity theft. Obviously that's related to the web. People stealing your photograph, your profile photo, and eventually your bank details. And then we have identity politics, which is 1987. And that refers to the tendency to base one's politics on a sense of personal identity as gay, Jewish, black, female. Obviously belonging to a group. I belong to this. In fact, it is actually relevant because, a person who says, this is the most important factor about me, or being Jewish, or being black, this is what gives me my identity. Okay, we're not going to go into that very much, but it's not really a good idea to base our whole identity on sexual inclination or even our race or anything like that. Our identity is a bit richer than that. It shouldn't be reduced to something like that. Okay, next please. Idem. Okay, so idem is actually a great little idea, the same for your identity. And that's why the archaeology is not bad. When we go to the archaeology of the word identity, it is actually pointing to something about us which is really fundamental. And it's more fundamental than race or sexual orientation or whatever it might be that you get in identity politics. People reduce themselves to their whatever, typically now to their sexual orientation, which is a bit of a pity because it's very reductive. Okay, so idem meaning really that thing about me which has been always the same. Okay, so this idea, since I was rolling around on my back, getting up on all fours, beginning to toddle, walking around, a big smile, fully grown adult, then going into old age, and then finally your last years. Okay, idem. We all know that we all have this experience, unless you've had an identity crisis, which I hope you haven't had. Okay, we all have this experience. I am the same person who was here in Pure in Heart last month, and the same person who, at the age of 10, I was running around the place, my summer holidays, or 3 years old, I was lost in a supermarket and completely freaking out because I was lost. Or I don't know if you can go back much earlier than that. I do have a memory of being in my cot, okay, I do, and escaping, or trying to escape. I don't know if I actually did escape, but trying, okay. So that's my earliest memory. But I know it's idem. I'm this exact same person. I am the exact same person. I haven't been replaced with somebody else. But somebody who met me in my cot, I don't know what age I was, but in my cot trying to escape, would not recognize me now, obviously. Not even my own mum. There was that being gap between her seeing me then and her seeing me now. So everything has changed. Physically, a lot of things mentally. Obviously, hopefully you don't have the mental age of a 1-year-old. Okay, so you've developed, also spiritually you've developed a whole lot of virtues, hopefully, or vices if you've gone downhill. So you have changed, you've matured. So let's say me, okay, at whatever age that was, there's me now perhaps. So Edom, I know, nobody else would know it. Like I say, God knows. But Edom, there's this identity that persists or perdures through all the changes. And this is very important to give you a tiny little bit of very high-speed Aristotelian philosophy, so you can go home and brag that you'll learn some Aristotelian philosophy. Aristotle talks about this exact same thing, and he says the Edom we call substance. Okay? Everything else he calls the accidents. There's not like an accident when you fall off your bicycle. An accident is like your height, the color of your hair, the tone of your voice, the color of your skin, when you get a tan or lose a tan. All these things are changeables. And some of them even more internal. You know, I change my mind, I change my opinion about things. I'm in a state of grace, I lose grace. That's still an accident, actually. Okay, so all these things are accidentals, that's what he calls them. In other words, all these things, some are more close to the Edom, the substance, some are further away, like holding my hands in this position. If I drop them down here, I've changed. It's not a very radical change. Okay, it's a tiny change. You know, but a deeper change obviously would be like a severe accident or growing more mature or whatever it is. They're deeper changes, but they're still accidentals. The Edom is this thing which you know, and only you have access to that thing that has always been there since your earliest memories. Okay, and would always be there. Always these things always end with this. But like the truth is, as Christians, we know that Edom will be here not just like in 50 years' time, but in 50 million years' time. That's kind of scary, actually, when we think about it. 50 million years' time, you're only getting going. So 50 billion years' time, we will still be this Edom. Okay, hopefully in heaven. Okay, but that's the drama of our identity. Okay, next please. Okay, this idea here is I just stole these off the web, different places. Okay, so they're just kind of fit in more or less. But the idea here is that what you have been doing for the past whatever number of years, what I've been doing for the last 56 years, is looking after this thing, this Edom, with your whole heart, your whole mind. You've been investing it in this Edom from the before you can remember. The first thing you did was start crying, because you felt traumatized by being born. Soon enough you felt traumatized by being hungry or being cold, and so on and so on and so on. So every day of your life you have been looking after this Edom, okay? Which experience in one way or another, experiencing when you're young, it's just these very superficial things of hunger, cold, or fear or something. Then they get more complex and so on. And it's not wrong that you are taking care of this thing, okay? This you, okay? In a way that, okay, obviously your mother was equally invested in you, at least at the age when she got tired of you, and she got tired of looking after you. But you're, somebody that was significant others who were really carefully invested in you, but at the same time very much invested in caring for themselves. And that's what we have to do. Of course, we wouldn't survive, we wouldn't live if we didn't look after this thing, which is perduring and it's changing, and I see it changing, and I don't know where it's going to go, what's going to happen. But in other words, we have not an obsession, because it shouldn't become an obsession, but we have a right, we should look after ourselves. And that's actually a commandment, okay? Love one another as you love yourselves. But you have to love yourself, okay, in the right way. Now, that's part of our talk, is what is the right way and what's the wrong way? And also, what do we need, actually? Okay, next please. Okay, so this idea of looking after yourself, okay? And again, I stole this from the web, and it's basically saying, kind of, this is the typical Western country, the most obvious example of this kind of picture of an individualistic culture is the United States of America, which kind of almost invented the idea. Okay, not completely. The French are more responsible, but this idea of looking after this thing, idum, this substance, which is you, and then so individualism. Then we're going to look at the history of this in a second. But what is it? These are seen as good qualities, and in some sense they are, but not completely. Self-sufficiency. I can look after myself. Sufficient means is enough. Okay, so I am enough for myself. Fine, but not perfect actually. There's a real danger in that. Okay, uniqueness, totally true. Okay, these people look quite unique. Uniqueness, there's only one of you. There only ever will be. We know this. More from our faith actually. Some of these things we know more from our faith. Like if you went to Egyptian in the 2,000 years before Christ and said, you're unique, he'd say, what are you talking about? You know, I'm just a little Egyptian slave, you know. They wouldn't have such a strong sense of uniqueness as we do. So the first autobiography ever written is probably St. Augustine's Confessions. Because with Christianity you get the strong sense of uniqueness, okay, for complex reasons. Autonomy. Auto is self, okay, etymologies. Nomi there's nomos, which means law. In other words, I give the law to myself. I make my laws for myself. That's the autonomous person. And again, this is seen as a great quality. I don't follow other people's laws. I make my own laws. Okay, bit dodgy. And then independence. Yeah, you should be an independent person. But again, what we're going to see is that our culture of an individualistic culture that we really belong in, and that we are all swimming around without realizing it in individualism up to our eyeballs. We are drinking individualism and these ideas, and they're good to a point. But individualism, taken to extreme, is very damaging. Okay, next. Okay, names. Okay, this name you know, this name you know, this name you might know. Okay, so Martin Luther, and these three are dealt with in a book by a Canadian philosopher called Jacques Maritain, and he talks about the three reformers. He's a very famous Catholic philosopher. Right, well, very famous, not very famous, but he's known. So he talks about these three people. Martin Luther, Descartes, and Rousseau, all famous, in a sense, they're the fathers of individualism. Okay? They're the thinkers, ideas, they're the one guys who come up with the ideas, and then the consequences come later. And you and I, in 2023, are living with the consequences largely of the ideas of these three guys. Okay, so Martin Luther, so they're different centuries. Okay, Luther writing in the 16th century, Descartes in the 17th century, and Rousseau in the 18th century. So they're basically 1 century after each other. Okay, Martin Luther. Okay, how is he one of the fathers of individualism? Anybody can hazard a guess? Okay, very wise. He is the father of individualism through the Reformation. He's the father of the Reformation. Okay, and essentially the Protestant Reformation moves from obviously Catholicism, which is you're unique, but you're not on your own. You are part of a body, the body of Christ. You're part of a church. No man is an island, and you're not. Even the way we say our Father, our Lord told us to say our Father, not my Father. So our faith, the Catholic faith, is not individualistic in that sense. Okay? So we see ourselves, or even the idea of being bound to a priest. Okay? You need priests, I need priests actually, because I can't go to confession to myself. Okay? We're really tied up. And if you need priests, you need bishops, you need a pope, you need its whole body, you need the whole institution, which is the church. And this part of the fight, if I find that, is basically, you could say, community. The church is a very important community. It's not the only one. A country is a community, a nation, all these kind of things. They're communities. But basically, Martin Luther says bye-bye to all that. He says all you need are two things, your Bible and your conscience. That's all you need. Okay? Bye-bye popes, bye-bye priests, bye-bye institutions. All you need, get your Holy Bible and get your conscience, and that's you and God alone. So it's hyper individualistic. And religion, more than anything else, has huge consequences further down the line. Okay, so Descartes is actually still a Catholic. Rousseau, Rousseau is really an atheist, but Descartes is the last of the big Catholic philosophers before Heidegger. But Descartes is a bit more complex in his case. But basically, he's the founder of modern philosophy. And anybody know his 3 famous words? In the Latin, they're always quoted in Latin. Come on, what are they? Anybody? I'll give you a free cream bun if you get it right. Say in Spanish. What is it? Pienso. Yeah, exactly. Well done. You get a cream bun. Okay. But okay. So in Latin it's cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Okay. So basically, what is I am? I am. So if you went to a Catholic, say like 200 years before in the medieval world, he would say, well, I what am I? You know, well, I am my identity, but I am the children of my parents. I'm the brother of my siblings. I'm a member of the church. All these kind of relationships. You would define yourself largely in terms of these relationships. But he says the only thing we're really sure of is cogito, I think. So in other words, he conceives of a person as just like a little ghost, a thinking ghost, and everything else you're not really sure of. You're not even so sure about your body. Okay, this week comes up later on in what we're undergoing now, which is called, well, the whole thing of sex changes and so on, where people kind of think my body is like a coat that I can change. Okay, before that they would have said, no, you and your body are one thing. Okay, you cannot separate yourself from your body. But with Descartes, he starts the ball rolling what's called dualism, that you have a soul and a body, and your body is essentially like a coat or a pair of shoes you can take on and take off. Because the real you, the identity of you, is your spirit, your soul, your cogitating. That's the real you. Okay, before there was that, no. The real you, in other words, if somebody kicks me in the leg, I would say, you kicked me. Okay, I don't say, you know, you kicked my leg, and my leg tells me about it or something. You know, you kicked me, you know. Or they say, I didn't kick you, I kicked your leg. You say, wow, you kicked me, okay? That's me, okay? So, but that's dualism, that he separates them. So that's also highly influential. And then Rousseau, his idea is society is bad for you, okay? You've heard of the idea of the noble savage. If we lived in a little hut in the mountains, on your own, or maybe with another person, but on your own, you have no society, then you would be noble, you'll be happy, all these things. All our problems come from the complexes that come from other people. Okay, so that's Rousseau's idea. Okay, it's not as influential as the other two, but still pretty influential. Our happiness is self-sufficiency, independence, autonomy, all that kind of stuff, all the stuff we see. Okay, next please. Very famous philosopher called Elsa. Okay, so you can sing that if you like. Okay, but I'm not going to sing it. It's time to see what I can do to test the limits and break through. No right, no wrong, no rules for me. Autonomy, that is. I'm free. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Sorry, twice. And I rise like the dawn. Let it go. Let it go. That I don't know what. So you can see that's really, it's really autonomy. Okay, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of huge thinking that went into composing that, but it's this kind of spirit of, this is the real me. Okay, and it's me on my own. That's the thing about that. Okay, next please. Aha. Okay, so this again just stolen from a website where this is being you create yourself. And again, you think of the idea, well, yeah, my body, I think I'll change my sex, or I'll change whatever, so that I am actually creating myself. And that makes me, this big word, buzzword, authentic. Authentic, okay? Now, what this is doing, this is what we're seeing about what we could call radical individualism, which is what we're seeing in all, kind of point, in all of this. What you're kind of seeing is individualism, but it's pretty radical, actually. And what it's doing is, you're breaking your links to your family, including ancestors, your culture at large, Okay, so for example, part of this would be, for example, that something that's kind of gone out the window a little bit is, say, a good nationalism. Okay, people are kind of embarrassed. Oh, the Irish flag, or they're embarrassed by whatever. We're not all Irish here, but you're a little bit embarrassed by my nation, my culture. Okay, there's a lovely line in the Old Testament, which is, "Remember the rock from which you are hewn." Okay, like we're all little rocks carved out of a quarry, a bigger rock. But don't forget the rock that you come from. And that is just like, in a certain sense, that's just like with our parents. Well, actually, I owe my existence to my parents who cooperated with God, but also to my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and what they gave me, the culture they gave me. So this kind of individualism leads us to kind of a certain disdain of where we came from. Okay, so it's kind of against what we call your love for your parents, which is called, the strict word for it is piety, actually. Not in the sense of piety is in religion, but piety is in devotion to your parents. But then devotion to your culture, the people you came from, which is called, what do we call that? Patriotism. Actually, it's a very similar virtue. Okay, and then society and state. So that's kind of a link to that. But then also independence from God. This idea that somehow, like just my parents, my culture, society, state, like Rousseau, if they're the bad guys, what I'm seeking is autonomy. Be free from them, because they're kind of, if I'm tied to my parents or I'm tied to my state, I lose my autonomy. Get that idea? I'm not independent the way I should be. Okay, even I didn't throw in here. Well, the family it's implicit there. The idea of marriage. Why do people not get married? Okay, or maybe at best they cohabit. Why that? Obviously, underlying that there's a kind of fear. If I get married, I'm stuck with this person forever. Okay, and that I cannot handle because that's too limiting on my autonomy, my independence. If we just cohabit, well, at least both of us can say at a certain point, adios, and we're happy. Get that idea? So it's the same thing. It's the same thinking ultimately, very subconsciously, but where we say my autonomy is the highest value. Then marriage and then having kids, even worse. Okay, you've got a wife, okay, that's bad enough. But then you got like 5 kids, and bang goes all your autonomy. You see that? So we put this as way up there as our highest good. And then God and religion similarly. Well, kind of an atheism is not even always kind of just because I worked at that there's no God. I don't want there to be a God because that seems like a bind on my freedom, my autonomy. Okay? And nature, well, we won't go there, but even nature in a certain sense. Okay, next please. What that produces is this idea of everybody, the little individuals. I visited Finland at one stage, and there some guy was showing us around. He said, "Oh, see all those blocks of apartments there?" He said some Finnish word for meaning. They're all basically 1-bedroom apartments, because a lot of Finns choose not to get married, not even to cohabit, not to be united with anybody, just to live on their own. You see that? So there was a special name for that, but there were lots of them. He said, "Oh, those blocks of apartments, that's not like student accommodation. This was like your life. Don't get married. Don't have any long-term relationships, or no relationships whatsoever, just on your own." So this produces this, we've got an alienated society. We're essentially alienated from everybody else. Or if there's relationships, they're very superficial. So we've got a colleague at work, even a passing, you could say, maybe going out with somebody, but it's very passing, or a very just a fleeting relationship with somebody. But it's all fleeting. Because people just go in and more. They got my little autonomy, I'm protecting my autonomy, protecting my innocence, my independence, etc. And sometimes they call it an atomized society. We're like little atoms, all separated, but not glued up in molecules, just little atoms, everybody their own. Now, obviously, what this produces, and again, all the social scientists are talking about this, is a lot of loneliness. Okay, so people are very lonely, actually. And I saw a statistic which said, basically pointed at, it was a BBC study from not too long ago, a very big study of loneliness in society. And you might think, who are the lonely people? Oh, the little old ladies, little old men, over 75, they're the lonely people. And the group, which is something, I think it was like 14 to 25, they were much lonelier than the 75 plus age group. Okay, so the relations kind of, they might be in a class with like 30 people, but still the relationships are so superficial, so passing. Okay, and partly because that's the world we've created. Okay, next please. Okay, I just threw that in there, but I'm not sure how well it works. They are cannibals. This is dinner. Okay, so she's obviously cooking up, and they're just waiting for din-dins. So, but the idea here is the idea that in these very superficial relationships, the idea is that we just use each other. Okay, that you've got your autonomy and I'm an individual, and really I only engage with other people really as objects. Okay, and obviously that becomes more dramatic and obviously more, well, obviously cannibalism is about as bad as you can get, but even in fleeting sexual relationships, what you do is you turn a person into an object, okay, for consumption. Pope Francis has talked a lot about this, the disposal society. So you get disposable razors for the guys and you throw them away. You get disposable napkins, throw them away. You get disposable people, use them, throw them away. So, okay, it's fine to throw away razors and napkins, but you cannot throw away human beings. So this is where we turn them into objects. Whereas part of this society, well, just me and my little den, and I just use things and then throw them away. Okay, next please. Okay, so that I just threw in this, it's kind of going a little bit off message, but the idea here is that this idea of the alienation, we talked about Descartes, you and your body are not even one. So you get the person then, funny enough, and I think it could be linked to this whole idea of being so independent that we're not even linked to our body anymore. Okay, our body somehow becomes like our next door neighbor, somehow alienated from me, and this is. There's many, I don't want to be too simplistic, there's many reasons for it, but gender dysphoria means, phoria is like euphoria, is a lovely feeling, okay? Dysphoria is a bad feeling. So gender dysphoria is the name for a person, a guy or a girl, who feels uneasy with their gender, with their sex. Okay, so it's more common with young teenagers. It used to be much more common with boys. And then over the last, say, decade or so, girls have outstripped boys like something like 400%. Okay, so now is almost dominated by girls, young teenagers, that they, for many reasons, which we were not going to go into, but they feel alienated from their own body. Okay. Now, I mean, what this used to be, classified with, say, anorexia nervosa and that kind of thing. You have to be treated, get over this, help you over it. But if the society then says, yeah, your body is like a coat which you can take off or put on, well, then also we can just put on a different coat. Okay, the fact that it's going to cost about, I don't know, 2 million euros over the course of a lifetime is by the by. Okay, but this idea of well, yeah, you and your body are detachable, so we just give you a different coat. Okay, it's a total disaster, but that's maybe for another talk. Okay, next please. Okay, so this idea of the loneliness. So, belonging. Okay, this sense of belonging. We all want to belong. Okay, we want to belong here. We want to belong in our workplace. Many things that are very good, like our religion gives us a tremendous sense. Our church gives us a wonderful sense of belonging. Very deep one, obviously. The deepest one probably possible, our family. But then obviously then people, if we said, no, this is good, it's good to be on your own, it's, you've got autonomy, look how autonomous she is, or she can do anything she likes, whatever. Well, she's no friends, no family, no real society, no religion, and even somehow alienated from nature. So this incredible loneliness which is produced. Okay, next please. Haha, what is this? This should be interesting. So as you go up to the top right-hand corner up here, you are getting towards more individualism. However they graph it, okay, so they've done these studies, and up here is the maximum individualism, down here is the minimum individual, maximum society, as in community. Now, that funny, because I was talking to people yesterday about this, and this is not necessarily where you want to be, okay? I think you want to be here, in Portugal, okay? Okay? Why? Because we are an individual, okay, and we're in society. Again, like a bit like the church. You know, the church doesn't reduce us. Or communism was the extreme case. Communism basically said, you're all like bees in a beehive. Okay? What matters is the beehive, the individual bees don't matter. And that's why in wintertime, about now, the worker bees are getting worried because the other bees are going to push them out. Said, your work is done, now we don't want you eating precious honey for the rest of winter, so bye-bye. And out you go. And they die. Okay? They're per se, individually, they don't have any worth. What is worth is the hive. So that's communism. So in communism, you're right down here because you've no worth except the only thing that's got worth is the community. Here, the only thing that's got really worth is the individual. So the maximum, all this is Scandinavia, interesting, but Sweden is the max. Okay, we're going to look at an example of that in a second. So where are we from here? So obviously the Irish are down here. So we're down here, survival, that's kind of like autonomy. I don't know exactly how it works, but anyway, I'm kind of looking at this axis here, okay? So we're up here, but I do think this is a healthy place to be. Greece, Spain is here. Anybody from some of these countries? I don't know, it's not easy to read these things. Anybody interesting countries?
Mexico.
Mexico. Can anybody see Mexico?
Yeah.
Down the bottom right.
Wow, whatever that means. I don't know what that means. Interesting, Mexico. So Latin America, well, they put the whole of Latin America, sorry, down here. Confucian, China down here. The Baltics, quite over here. But anyway, what I'm looking at is this. The Islamic and African countries are way down there. But I do think, if you go too much in the community, what matters is the community, not the individual. The uniqueness of the individual is underlooked or undervalued. What you want to get is a healthy balance of the individual and the community.
South Africa's in the sweet spot, right in the middle there.
South Africa is, yeah, not bad. Is that from a South African, is it?
Yes.
Oh, very good, okay. Not bad, healthy, okay. Good, okay.
Sorry, Father, can you just explain a sweet spot between not individualism, and what's it a sweet spot between?
Oh, so individualism and community and individual.
Okay.
Okay, so it's all about the individual. It's just autonomy, me and my little hut in the mountains. It was all community. Well, it doesn't matter about you. It's just a hive. Okay, next please. Aristotle, okay. So BC and everything. And he's got this lovely, very famous phrase, which I imagine you think about every day. Man is by nature a social animal. An individual is, man is by nature a social animal. An individual who is unsocial, naturally, or by nature, and not accidentally, don't worry too much about that, is either beneath our notice or more than human. In other words, what he's saying is, we are made, he's just looking at, he's a wonderful observer of life, okay? And other things as well. But he says, looking at human beings and thinking about them, he says, wow, we're made to be with people. By that he means actually primarily friendship. He basically said, we absolutely need friends. Friendship is very important for us, okay? So he's saying, if you don't care about other people, if you want to live in a little hut in the Alps all by yourself, there's two possibilities. You're either superhuman or you're subhuman. You're either a god. He didn't know about the Trinity, he didn't know what his thinking about God is in splendid isolation. God doesn't need anybody. Okay, so you're either like a god, or you're like an animal, living in a little hole in the ground and doesn't need anybody else. Okay, but human beings, we're neither gods nor animals. We need others. We're social by nature. It's interesting. Okay, next please. So, okay, so he says, how do we know this? What is the sign of this? That we're social in a way the animals aren't. And he says, communication. So the way animals communicate is very, very basic. Okay, their communication is basically things like, okay, and we all know that means keep away. Okay, or not much more than that. Okay, so that's the kind of thing. Animals 3 or 4 little ideas and you got it. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, human beings, like all these things that are coming out of my mouth, all these words, is very unique. So Aristotle says, well, this capacity to form words and to communicate, what are we communicating? Not emotions, like we're communicating ideas. And essentially even very profound ideas of what is good, what is bad, love, all these things. We're communicating. And so the very fact of using words, he says, is essential to us. And he says that's how we form friendships. Okay? We form friendships by conversation. Okay? So he says, here a nice phrase, he says, the soul of friendship is conversation. Okay? That's true. When you get to know somebody, you have to talk. Okay? If you're very shy, you still have to talk. Okay? I'd be left in the kitchen at parties. Okay? Otherwise we have to talk. Now, it's not always easy. And that's why, actually, what's happening, I've seen a couple of articles about this recently. Your generation hates phone calls. Okay? I was brought up, on the blower the whole time, talking on the phone, where you just want texts. Okay? And this was saying that it can even be a bit traumatic getting a phone call from somebody you don't know. Okay? Oh my God, I'm going to have to talk to this person. Okay? And that's a little bit the idea of pushing back. Okay? Pushing back. Because the most personal thing is face to face, eyeball to eyeball. And that's not, for everybody, that's a little bit difficult. Okay? Nice to meet you, shake your hand. What do I say next? I've forgotten your name already. That kind of thing. So that's a little bit difficult. So that's face to face. Then you could go Zoom, get a little something between us, and then you could say just a phone call is further away, or maximum for the moment anyway, it's just a text. Okay, so actually Pope Francis again, he's spoken about this. Maybe it was World Youth Day, but don't mediate all your friendships. Don't mediate everything. Run the risk of a face-to-face encounter. I think it's very good. I think it's very good advice. But here we have, I think it's very nice because especially over meals. One of the things we bond, especially over meals. Funny enough, why that is, I'm not so sure. But it's just like this is by an American artist from the last century, whose name I forget, but he's very well known. But you see these people talking, and it's all eye contact and chit chatting. It's very nice over Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving. I don't know, Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner. So it's very nice. Okay, but it's that idea. That's how we. In other words, communication. That word is the same root as community, or even communion. We talk. We get to know each other. Okay, even the thing of the incarnation, our Lord. What does the Lord come down? Our Lord comes down and communicates. He talks. He looks at people face to face. Just at this very human sense, the human way. It's the exact same. Okay, very good. This is a city in the north of Sweden. Okay, I forget the name of it, Loasa or something like that. But this is just like from last week, and they've started a campaign in that city. I know one word in Swedish, and that's that word, hej. Okay, which means hello. Okay, that's what I mean, hey. So when you're in Sweden, hey, and you go back, hey. That's the response, double. And sag, that made me a wise then. It means say. It looks like say hi, say hello. Because there in this town, like now, they've got a campaign to get people to say hello to each other. Because they just don't even say hello. And in the article it was saying, they just avoid even eye contact because they just dread talking to strangers. And the Swedes don't do small talk anyway. They call it dead talk. Swedes, poor Swedish. And I have a good friend who's Swedish, but still. So they just talk because they're immensely lonely, really, ultimately, because we're still a social animal. Okay? And we flourish through interaction. Okay? We can't really, that's what Aristotle is saying, you can't really flourish without friendships and significant interaction with people. Okay? Next one, which I think is the last one. Yes. Okay. So this is a phrase from John Paul II, which is kind of almost at the core of a lot of that. He taught man cannot fully find himself except through a sincere gift of himself. Okay? So what do you see here? This is, okay, I don't know what's happening here, but obviously we can guess what's in that gift. Okay, it's a guy wrapped up. So in other words, the gift of self is that you're communicating. Okay, in communicating, you're giving a little bit of yourself. Okay, talking to somebody, spending time, a small talk, all that kind of thing. You're actually kind of giving yourself, even in a kind of superficial way. With a friend, we use that phrase. You invest in a friendship. You give yourself a lot in a friendship. Okay, you risk. You always risk. There's a bit of a risk there. And obviously, the maximum human friendship is marriage. Okay. And there in marriage, you think of the female counterpart of that is a wedding dress. A wedding dress is wrapping paper. Okay? So what do you do when you get a gift with wrapping? Oh, that's lovely wrapping paper. Okay? You take it off and you never use it again. Okay? You don't go shopping the next day in your wedding dress. Okay? Oh, it's nice and warm. It's kind of practical. No, it's not practical. Okay, it's absolutely no use. Okay, maybe your daughter will get married in it, but it's wrapping paper. Yeah. It's the exact same. It's the exact same function. It's once off, or maybe used by a daughter, but in that sense, it's still once off. It's very beautiful and very useless, except to wrap the gift. Okay, so the guy, in a certain sense, the tuxedo is less so, but still, a tuxedo is a little approaching that, but especially a wedding dress is wrapping. You see that? So it's so true then. So we don't really discover who we are unless we actually give ourselves, which is very counter to the whole thing of individualism. Individualism says, no, you just take everything for you, autonomy. Don't get involved with other people. Don't marry them, definitely. Don't, make sure your friendships are superficial. People are dangerous. But this is the sincere gift of himself. Actually, and then just finally occurs to me, we've just been at Mass. And what does our Lord do? Okay, our Lord does that to the maximum. Okay, one word for receiving Holy Communion is communicate. Did you communicate today? It's a bit of an old word, but people say that for receiving Holy Communion. But that's what our Lord has done. He's kind of wrapped himself up, okay, in the appearance of bread, and he's given himself completely to us. A little bit by way of example is that this is what we're made to do. Give ourselves completely. In different, obviously, priesthood is a vocation. You do that, but every vocation, whether it's marriage or not marriage. Every vocation, one way or another, looking after an elderly parent, looking after a group of people in one way or another for your life, or say, all of them is the sincere gift of oneself. Shin Shin. Okay, that's it. Good. Okay. Good. Any brief questions? Kind of brief. There's a lot of ideas there. A lot of ideas, but I think it is important just that I know a priest who's a bit of philosophy. He says individualism is the heresy of our age. Kind of, you wouldn't think, different things are the heresy of our age, but he says, yeah, individualism actually is the heresy of our age, especially in the Western world, and we are really we're not Scandinavia, but it is kind of, it gets into our marrow. You know what I mean? And we have to keep pushing against it. I think. Yeah.
How would you respond to someone who says that, I don't know, choosing the vocation of marriage or the vocation of priesthood or whatever it might be, like corrals your freedom or shuts it down? Like, how would you like provide a rebuttal to that?
Yeah. You do lose. Of course, you lose freedom. Okay. By getting married or becoming a priest, there's lots of things you will not be able to do, okay? But essentially, if you want all that freedom, you're choosing freedom over love, simply, okay? You'll be free. You go on holidays all the time you like, watch whatever you want on TV, eat whatever you want. You don't have to, deal with somebody else's tastes or anything. Never have to look after a sick person. But then you never discover love, okay? And that's a tragedy.
Yeah, I think Jason Everett talks about this quite a bit. The DINK, double income, no kids.
Oh yeah.
And
it's very sad.
They might be like physically richer,
yeah,
like so much poorer.
That's right.
In the heart.
Yeah, so true.
And they've lost
kind
of a sense of true joy. Like you see any parent, like their children is their joy.
Yeah, there's a marvelous passage in Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. So this is the guy who was in Auschwitz, who was Jewish, He became a very famous psychiatrist afterwards. He was, he was never a Christian, but he was very, very sympathetic to Christianity. But he was taken to Auschwitz, and his wife was taken to the neighboring camp at the women's side of Auschwitz. He didn't know if she was alive or dead, but he was walking along with his friend one of the days, and they started talking about their wives. And the friend said, "Oh, if our wives could see us now." And then he says, because it's a beautiful passage, he says that even just thinking of my wife, I found myself in bliss. Okay, just think about her. He said, I didn't know if she was alive or dead, but just the thought of my wife filled me with bliss. And he said, then I understood what it means in the Old Testament when it says the angels are lost in the bliss of the vision of God. He said, now I understand. But that's love. He would not have that experience if he chose this kind of radical individualism. I would never know that kind of bliss. Yeah.
But how can people balance like giving themselves but also not giving too much of themselves? Because that's kind of what happens sometimes in the culture. So it goes from one extreme to another. So if they could give too much of themselves, that they get so hurt that they go into themselves and they don't give themselves. And it's just so difficult for them people to come out and then to try and to try to give themselves because they know that maybe others around them are not gonna receive that.
Yeah. Well, the only thing is, you do have to give yourself. I mean, you think of the marriage vow. You know, do you X take Y, for richer, for poorer, for better, for worse? Okay, so you are actually doing something very radical. You are going to really give yourself. Okay. In marriage. Now, the thing about it there is you have to choose, you have to know your vocation, to put it that way. Okay? So, you know, you don't every random stranger meet, you know, walking down the road, you don't say, I give myself to you for richer, for poorer, for better, for worse. You say it to one individual. Okay? So you in that sense, you're not called, like I'm called to give myself a very clear vocation, but that means a lot of things I'm not going to give myself completely. You know what I mean? Not even partially in some cases. You know what I mean? That's not my calling. Okay? So you have to know who are you to give yourself to. Okay? But when you have that, you do have to give yourself risking, burnout and all these things, because I think the danger then is that, especially in marriage, you start making conditions, putting conditions. I give myself to you, but it has to be for better or for richer. Okay? If my income goes down or my summer holidays get shorter or whatever it is, no. Okay? So, but and really what you find, again, Pope Francis has written about this quite well. He's talking about priests burning out. Okay? And he says, I mean, it's just his opinion, I suppose, but he does say very, very often that's giving themselves in the wrong way, for the wrong reasons. For example, seeking admiration. Seeking, you know, I'm going to give myself to you because I want something from you. I want admiration. I want to be famous. I want to be whatever. And that leads to a kind of burnout. Okay? Whereas a wife who gives herself to her husband, even if he turns out badly or vice versa, still in that kind of self-giving, there's not that, there's still the danger that this thing will go awry, but you are still loving in the right way. You can love in the wrong way, put it that way. Love the wrong person, in a disordered kind of way, love for the wrong reasons is not genuine love. But when you're loving for the right reasons, especially within your vocation, I don't really think there's a danger. You get tired, you get knackered, but that's kind of different. You know, you can be knackered, but it's a good tiredness. You know, it's not this depressed, kind of unfulfilled kind of tiredness. You know, I've given everything and the creep didn't even say thank you. Okay, that kind of thing. You know, well, I didn't do it for the thank you. It's like Saint Therese of Lisieux in her little flower book. Okay, it's a beautiful descriptions of her looking after these nuns. Okay, she's looking after this elderly nun who everything she does, the woman is just complaining and groaning, and she imagines her friends, I think it is, at a salon listening to beautiful classical music, kind of thinking, well, I could have been there. She could have, you know. But she realizes, I have so much more happiness listening to this so-and-so, she didn't say so-and-so, but listening to this lady complaining about everything I do. But funny, she said, it's still bliss. Amazing. not being in the salon, listening to the beautiful classical music with friends and so on, in beautiful dresses. She can imagine that for a second, saying, I'm so much happier. So I think it's that kind of thing. It is that kind of self-giving. But it's marriage or priesthood or whatever it is. So anyway, hopefully. Okay, now I am going to go. Great. So very good, a pleasure. It was very nice. Good. Like the spotlight.